appeasing Vladimir Putin, a lying, murderous dictator. Make that make sense. Canadians are reasonable, and we are polite, but we will not back down from a fight. Not when our country and the well-being of everyone in it is at stake. At the moment, the U.S.
This is actually amazing because the Liberals are going to win the election because of Trump. The Conservatives in Canada are going to lose the election because of Trump. That's insane.
Tariffs came into effect in the early hours of this morning, and so did the Canadian response. Canada will be implementing 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods, starting with tariffs on $30 billion worth of goods immediately, and tariffs on the remaining $125 billion of American products in 21 days' time. Encore aujourd'hui, on se voit forcé d'imposer des droits de douane de 25% sur 155 milliards de dollars américains de marchandises. 30 milliards de marchandises américaines, excusez-moi. 30 milliards de dollars de façon immédiate et dans 21 jours, 125 milliards de dollars de marchandises de plus. Today, we will also be challenging these illegal actions by filing dispute resolution claims at the World Trade Organization and through the USMCA. But in the meantime, our tariffs will remain in place until the U.S. tariffs are withdrawn, and not a moment sooner. And should these tariffs not cease, we are in active and ongoing discussions with provinces and territories to pursue several non-tariff measures, measures which will demonstrate that there are no winners in a trade war. Now, just like I did a month ago, I want to speak first directly to the American people. We don't want this. We want to work with you as a friend and ally. And we don't want to see you hurt either. But your government has chosen to do this to you. As of this morning, markets are down, and inflation is set to rise dramatically all across your country. Your government has chosen to put American jobs at risk, at the thousands of workplaces that succeed because of materials from Canada or because of consumers in Canada, or both. They've chosen to raise costs for American consumers on everyday essential items like groceries and gas, on major purchases like cars and homes, and everything in between. They've chosen to harm American national security, impeding access to the abundant critical minerals, energy, building materials, and fertilizers that we have and that the United States needs to grow and prosper. They've chosen to launch a trade war that will, first and foremost, harm American families. They've chosen to sabotage their own agenda that was supposed to usher in a new golden age for the United States. And they've chosen to undermine the incredible work we've done together to tackle the scourge that is fentanyl, a drug that must be wiped from the face of the earth. So on that point, let me be crystal clear. There is absolutely no justification or need whatsoever for these tariffs today. Now, the legal pretext your government is using to bring in these tariffs is that Canada is apparently unwilling to help in the fight against illegal fentanyl. Well, that is totally false. Let's look at the facts. Our border is already safe and secure. Far less than 1% of fentanyl flows and less than 1% of illegal crossings into the United States comes from Canada. But we acted because we know we can always do better. We responded to concerns, including from the President, by implementing an ambitious $1.3 billion border plan. A border plan that includes generational investments in new AI and imaging tools to stop the flow of fentanyl in its tracks, stronger coordination and information sharing with American agencies, along with the deployment of drones, helicopters, and additional personnel to keep our border secure. Now, a month ago, as part of an agreement with the United States that paused the tariffs, we made further commitments. We appointed Kevin Brasseau as our fentanyl czar, a man who dedicated his multi-decade career in law enforcement to combating organized crime networks and drug trafficking. We
AKA the CIA.
designated 7 drug cartels, sick, evil groups who cynically profit off the pain and suffering of people on both sides of the border, as the terrorist organizations that they are. And just yesterday, we launched a new joint operations partnership supported by a $200 million investment between Canada's security and law enforcement agencies, a partnership that will enhance the coordination of information and intelligence in order to thwart criminal gangs involved in the illegal fentanyl trade. And critically, our actions are working. As the U.S. Customs and Border Protection just acknowledged, there was a 97% drop in fentanyl seizures from January compared to December, to a near zero low of less than half an ounce seized in January, even with all the further enforcements and actions we've taken at the borders. In sum, we stepped up. We engaged closely and constructively with the President and his administration. We did everything we promised. We stuck to our word. And we did it because we believe in working together to protect our citizens. Now I want to speak directly to one specific American, Donald. In the over 8 years you and I have worked together, we've done big things. We signed a historic deal that has created record jobs and growth.
I love how
in
Donald Trump
both
is
of
like
our
a
countries.
toddler that everybody has to pretend is smart.
We've done big things together on the world stage, as Canada and the US have done together for decades, for generations. And now we should be working together to ensure even greater prosperity for North Americans in a very uncertain and challenging world. Now, it's not in my habit to agree with the Wall Street Journal, but Donald, they point out that even though you're a very smart guy, this is a very dumb thing to do. We two friends fighting is exactly what our opponents around the world want to see. And now, to my fellow Canadians, I won't sugarcoat it. This is going to be tough, even though we're all going to pull together, because that's what we do. We will use every tool at our disposal so Canadian workers and businesses can weather this storm. From expanding EI benefits and making them more flexible to providing direct supports to businesses, we will be there as needed to help. But Canada, make no mistake, no matter how long this lasts, no matter what the cost, the federal government and other orders of government will be there for you. We will defend Canadian jobs. We will take measures to prevent predatory behavior that threatens Canadian companies because of the impacts of this trade war, leaving them open to takeovers. We will relentlessly fight to protect our economy. We will stand up for Canadians every single second of every single day, because this country is worth fighting for. Les derniers mois ont été stressants et honnêtement épuisants pour nous tous. Mais je crois qu'on peut être rassuré par l'incroyable solidarité dont on a tous été témoins entre nous. Solidarité entre nos entreprises, nos syndicats, notre société civile, les communautés autochtones et tous les Canadiens. L'ensemble de la société canadienne parle d'une seule voix pour qu'on se fasse entendre de nos partenaires américains pour illustrer que l'imposition des droits de douane, c'est une très mauvaise idée. En même temps, on travaille à l'interne pour faire tomber les obstacles au commerce.
The Canadian broadcast and American stock market graph next to Trudeau. Oh shit. Okay, maybe we need to switch to that one. Where? You're lying to me.
Entre nos provinces et territoires. On travaille pour rejoindre de nouveaux marchés à travers le monde, pour bâtir une économie toujours plus forte et plus résiliente. Dans les dernières années, j'ai eu plusieurs occasions de discuter avec des leaders du monde entier. Mon message est toujours le même. Le Canada est un partenaire fiable et notre porte est grande ouverte. Dans les dernières semaines, on a aussi redoublé d'efforts pour renforcer nos liens avec le Mexique, qui a lui aussi été frappé par ces tarifs. Ensemble, on va chercher de nouvelles façons de collaborer et de s'appuyer l'un sur l'autre pour faire face à cette menace. Face à l'incertitude, face à l'inquiétude, les Canadiens ont fait preuve de tellement de solidarité. Je vous ai vu partager des listes de produits canadiens pour aider vos proches à appuyer les entreprises d'ici. Je vous ai vu changer vos plans de vacances et opter pour des magnifiques destinations touristiques qu'on a ici chez nous, au Canada. Je vous ai vu redoubler d'efforts pour soutenir nos petites entreprises et nos travailleurs. Je vous ai vu vous porter à la défense de notre culture et la faire rayonner. Je vous ai vu encourager nos athlètes avec une ferveur sans précédent. Moi qui croyais que je ne pouvais pas être plus fier de notre pays et de mes compatriotes. Mais j'ai encore quelque chose à vous demander. Lâchez pas. C'est le moment de redoubler d'efforts, de se tenir debout pour notre pays, de faire tout ce qu'on peut pour choisir le Canada, pour défendre le Canada. On va passer ensemble à travers des moments difficiles. Mais après vous avoir vu aller dans les dernières semaines, j'ai jamais été aussi optimiste quant au futur de notre beau pays, malgré tous les défis qu'on va être en train de vivre ensemble. Le Canada reste le meilleur pays sur Terre. On a tellement de raisons d'être fiers de notre chez-nous, de ces quelques arpents de neige. Mais surtout, je suis fier de notre capacité à nous serrer les coudes quand vient le temps. Les Canadiens ont différentes origines, différentes langues, différentes croyances. Mais quand vient le temps de défendre notre pays, on le fait d'une seule voix, main dans la main. À travers vents et marées, les Canadiens peuvent toujours compter les uns sur les autres. Now, we've been through tough spots before. But every time we've faced long odds and seemingly insurmountable obstacles, we've not only survived, we've emerged stronger than ever. Because when it comes to defending our great nation, there is no price we all aren't willing to pay. And today is no different. Merci beaucoup, mes amis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. Merci beaucoup. We will now take 20 minutes of questions. Nous prendrons 20 minutes de questions. One question, one follow-up, une question, un suivi. Merci.
Hi, Prime Minister. Tom Perry with CBC. You're reaching out to the president today. You're speaking directly to him. We heard from U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, who says that Donald Trump will be speaking to Canadians. And he also says that he wants to see more progress on fentanyl. So my question to you is, Do you have any conversation scheduled with Donald Trump in the coming days? Is that something maybe your successor should do? And do you really believe that this is about fentanyl, or is there something larger at play here?
I have offered to speak to Donald over the past a number of days, and I expect to speak with him in the days to come. I'm always there to talk with him about the importance of working together to take.
Frost Prime says, I had a banger Hassan tweet. You should just link me it, man. Just link me it.
Take on the world at this time. The facts show very clearly that in terms of taking action on fentanyl, we are doing everything that is necessary, and not just for the United States.
I pooped my pants. Don't get me started. Don't get me started about being stinky boy. I smelled you. You know, at TwitchCon, I've smelled you. I know what you. I know. I know how you are olfactorily offensive. Okay, don't you dare. Don't you dare kick my boy when he's down.
Canadians are suffering as well from the scourge that is illegal fentanyl. We have laid out extensive plans, actions, cooperations, including as recently as the past days in Washington, and they have always been very well received.
Potential relief
And the
programs.
numbers bear
In
that
Quebec,
out.
they're talking out the possibility of 160,000 jobs being lost. There are plants closing already. Now, is there something on the table today that you can tell Canadians in order to try and mute the effect of these tariffs? Well, there are things that we will be looking at immediately when it comes to the employment insurance program, but I want to remind Canadians that our goal is not to find ways for Canadians to get through these tough times. It is to prevent these tough times from lasting any more than they absolutely have to. If we can have those tariffs removed tomorrow, that's what we will try to do. Our priority is to put an end to this economic war, and the fact that Americans will immediately be facing layoffs and problems with respect to their own consumer products will certainly help us to put an end to this challenge as quickly as possible. But in fact, we are looking at a number of options, a number of things that we can do if those tariffs remain in place longer than a day or two. Even with the immediate review of UEI programs that we might want to tweak.
First and foremost, as we reflect on the impacts on Canadian workers and Canadian jobs and businesses, is that, first of all, there will be similar impacts on Americans losing their jobs, American families paying more for basic goods that they rely on at a time where times are tight everywhere. But our focus has to be on getting these tariffs lifted as quickly as possible. What can we do in the coming days is our focus to make sure that these tariffs don't last a second longer than necessary. So we will be looking at, including looking in the coming day at things we can do around adjusting EI to support people through this difficult time. But our priority has to be not on figuring out how to manage through these tariffs over the coming days and weeks and months, but on doing everything we can to get them lifted and put an end to this unjustified trade war.
One of the things that I would say is it's just like, one of the most important things about the economy is a concept that is known as animal spirits. Animal spirits is economist for vibes. When everybody feels like the vibes are fucked, the economy crashes. When everybody feels optimistic, the economy grows. Donald Trump has just successfully killed the vibes. And once people start cutting back, that causes other people's businesses to start to be unprofitable. And then they start cutting back because their business is unprofitable. And so their cutbacks cause other people to cut back. And that's how you get a recession. All recessions are vibe sessions. And this is one of the oldest and most accurately understood elements of the economy, is that when the vibes are bad, the economy's bad. And Donald Trump just smashed the fucking vibes. I don't care whether or not you think the tariffs are justified or not. The way he's doing it is completely uncoordinated and makes no fucking sense. He's fucking the vibes.
That hurts American families and Canadian families.
On a l'impression que vous n'avez plus beaucoup de cartes dans votre jeu.
I
Est-ce que
think you
de devancer
don't have that many cards left to play. Now, would the renegotiation of the Kuzma agreement be a way to address this? Well, right now, in our conversations with the president, it's not very clear what he's actually trying to do or what he wants. Perhaps the only clarity is what he's said a number of times, which is that his goal is to ruin the Canadian economy so that he can then move on to annex the country. That's what he wants. So I'm not sure. I'm not really certain what kind of negotiation could go forward right now that would convince him.
I can't believe there's a shitty podcast called Animal Spirits that now fucking, is all over the search results for Google. Like, can you kill me now? Can you kill me now? I'm trying to get like a couple minute explainer, and now it has this dog shit grifter podcast. Like, fuck you, Google. You suck shit. And like the explanations are like tutor to you, like, and simple explain. Like, come on. The quality of everything sucks shit now. Is this AI? Is this
Animal Spirits, a term coined?
The top result on Google is an AI response? The internet is actually just dog shit now. This is 1.5 hours long. I just wanted a baby tier level explanation.
Hi there. One of the concepts mentioned on the Edexcel AS macro syllabus, and one that's certainly relevant to every single board, is the idea of animal spirits, in particular animal spirits and business investment. Let's spend a moment or two thinking about that. This chart shows total business investment in the UK economy. It's measured in millions of pounds, and it's measured also at constant 2012 prices. In other words, it shows us the real level of investment. And you can see that investment follows a cyclical pattern. It's quite strong from 2005 and 2007 and 2008, but then it fell sharply in 2009. It took a little bit while to recover. In fact, in 2012, business investment was still a little bit below the level in 2008. So investment tends to be quite highly cyclical. Why is this? Well, many factors determine business investment, and one of the key factors is expectations. Expectations play a key role for businesses, particularly when they're thinking of making major, bulky, expensive investment projects in new capital goods, new factories and new technology. Many factors determine investment: actual demand and expected demand, expected profitability, the actual level of interest rates and the expected level of interest rates in the future, and crucially the state of business confidence, or Keynesian animal spirits. Keynes coined the notion of animal spirits, and basically this was about the psychology of business decisions. The driving force, animal spirits are the driving force that gets people and businesses going in the economy. So what are animal spirits? Animal spirits is a mix of different emotions: confidence, trust, mood, expectations, and crucially animal spirits can fluctuate quite quickly and quite rapidly.
And this is the point that I think people are not quite understanding. That the confidence of business is taking a shit. When you combine the DeepSeek and the fact that the Chinese are way ahead of where we thought they would be on AI, which was a major bubble, but you look at the Tesla bubble, because Tesla just has no plausible way of making the valuation of its stock make sense. So you've got the Tesla bubble, you've got the AI bubble, and now you have the tariff crisis. People's confidence has been shattered. And unless I start to see something that's going to change that, we are headed directly toward the fucking cliff.
So in a situation where confidence is low, where animal spirits are sagging, people save more, businesses save more too, and because there's less demand and lower profits, businesses tend to scale back their production, perhaps postpone some major planned investment projects. So it's a deterioration in animal spirits will lead to a fall in planned investment. Indeed, when people save more and when there's reduced investment, both of those cause a contraction in aggregate demand and can cause the level of...
Do you think it will be like 2008? Maybe I could buy a house again. Do you have a lot of cash? Do you have a lot of cash, Hackstock? Because if you don't have cash, how are you getting the money?
Income to go down. This was what Keynes called the paradox of thrift. Saving in principle is good, but if we all save a little bit more and spend a little bit less, and all of us, including businesses and households, we can end up poorer as a result. But the key thing is that business investment is largely driven by expectations, and the Keynesian concept of animal spirits is tremendously important in understanding that.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what Donald Trump is successfully creating. His poor confidence.
This is the right thing to do. And really, what we have to do is demonstrate that our economies are very closely linked and that these kinds of barriers and tariffs will mean suffering for people on both sides of the border. That, in fact, we should be working together, doing things together. And while he decides to ruin the Canadian economy, I don't know whether, in terms of negotiations or in the face of such bad faith, where he brings in tariffs against Canada without any factual justification, I don't know whether opening negotiations would be a good idea. We're open to doing it if he wants that, but he has not even referred to that possibility.
I'm just trying to remember. What was that? Cosmet, that's right. I think in terms of what he wants, and I heard he talked about banking again this morning in a tweet, which doesn't make any sense because American banks, there's about 16 American banks currently active in Canada holding about $113 billion worth of assets in this country. So the American banks are alive and well and prospering in Canada. It's an example of not really being able to see what it is that he wants, because even the excuse that he's giving for these Paris tariffs today of fentanyl is completely bogus, completely unjustified, completely false. So we actually have to fold back on the one thing he has said repeatedly, that what he wants is to see a total collapse of the Canadian economy, because that'll make it easier to annex us, is the second half of his thought. Now, first of all, that's never going to happen. We will never be the 51st state. But yeah, he can do damage to the Canadian economy, and he's started this morning. But he is rapidly going to find out, as American families are going to find out, that that's going to hurt people on both sides of the border. Americans will lose jobs. Americans will be paying more for groceries, for gas, for cars, for homes, because we have always done best when we work together. So we are, of course, open to starting negotiations on the customer review, but let us not fool ourselves about what he seems to be wanting. And I will admit, I have been holding out hope that these tariffs were just a clever negotiating ploy that would have the impact that they're having now without even bringing them in over the past weeks, as we've seen order books dry up for Canadian companies from American customers, as we've seen expansion plans in Canada put on hold, as we've seen people choosing to invest in the United States over the past weeks because of the threat of tariffs. But now that he's moved forward with tariffs, we're going to see the real impact of a trade war between our two countries. And that impact will be to hurt American families.
Prime Minister Tonda McCharles with the Toronto Star. I hope you can be as specific as possible for a number of these points. Everybody's looking to what actually you're going to do. In your statement last night, you referenced non-tariff measures, and I want to know exactly what you're prepared to contemplate there. And given that your likely successors, both Carney and Poilievre, have said it should be dollar-for-dollar retaliatory tariffs, that's on $600 billion worth of American imports. If you were to do that, is that on or off the table?
I will be sitting down, as I have every week for the past many, many weeks, with the premiers this afternoon to talk about our individual, combined, and collective response to this. As we've put on the table, the federal government has $155 billion
premiers are like governors in Canada,
that we can move forward with immediately, and that we will be moving forward with both now and 21 days from now to give Canadian companies time to adjust their supply chains to not be overly impacted by this. But there are many other things that have been surfaced by different premiers in different approaches that we can look at. One, for example, is around purchasing and around suppliers and around contracts, whether it's municipal, provincial, or federal, with American companies. There are many different things that we've been looking at, and that conversation with the premiers this afternoon is going to be very, very important. But I can tell you what we have seen is Canadians across provinces and territories, across political lines, are united in knowing that this is a time to hit back hard and to demonstrate that a fight with Canada will have no winners. And the sooner we can get past this fight, back to working together to take on the world, as our two countries always have, the better we'll all be.
To what extent have you turned or gotten cooperation from any other allies to exact more pain on the U.S. to accelerate getting to a solution? And are you concerned that Mexico appears to be trying to do their own thing maybe next Sunday?
The Canadians are saying, how do we plan on getting more pain for the U.S.? Marx is crying right now of joy. The Chinese diplomat is sitting there watching this and just laughing his ass off. Donald Trump is single-handedly destroying American goodwill. To the point where Canadians are like, how do we make Americans suffer? That's incredible.
Where are you with any guarantees you've got allies?
Another troubling example of Hassan being offline and the world goes to shit. Hassan banned equals stock market crash, and the Canadians saying how they want to hurt Americans.
Just spent quite a bit of time over these past couple of weeks meeting with European and international allies to talk about a number of different things, including standing up for the rules-based order by defending Ukraine, but also being there for each other in a more challenging and uncertain world. And I can tell you that every country is very, very aware that if the American government is willing to do this to their own closest ally, neighbor, and friend, everyone is vulnerable to a trade war. And our ability to work together thoughtfully and strategically to make sure we're supporting our citizens, we're doing things together in a more diversified way, is something that is on the mind of all of our allies.
En français, vous en êtes où dans les discussions avec les alliés, que ce soit européens ou mexicains?
Where are you in
Comme vous savez,
discussions
au
with
cours des
European
dernières semaines,
allies?
j'ai eu
Well, as you know, in
beaucoup de
recent weeks, I had a lot of conversations with many of our allies and our European friends on the international stage, and I can tell you that everyone is worried. They see that if the United States is prepared to do that to Canada, their closest ally and partner, their most interconnected ally, then everyone is at risk. And our ability to work together and to do more together to diversify our supply chains in a more deliberate manner. Well, these are the conversations we're having now, and we will continue to have them with our allies. With our Mexican partners, we continue to be in close contact, and we continue to look at how we can do things together, as I said, to not suffer any more than needed through these tariffs.
Rachel Haynes from CTV National News. As we know, the Liberal Party is going to be picking a new leader over the weekend, but when is it going to be your last official day as Prime Minister?
That will be up to a conversation between the new leader and myself to figure out how long a transition is needed. It should happen reasonably quickly, but there's a lot of things to do in a transition like this, particularly at this complicated time in the world. My last day will be determined once the new leader of the Liberal Party has been selected. This is a conversation we will have to have about how much time will be required for the transition. There are a lot of things to be considered, but I know that we will be able to do that quite quickly.
It sounds like it won't be immediately on March 9th or March 10th, so it sounds like you'll probably still have some time remaining to put in some more actions on this. Is one of those things that you're considering going to be taxing oil, gas, and potash exports, even if premiers don't consent to that?
As I said, the most important thing we're facing, as I've said, the most important thing we can do is ensure that Canadians remain united. That's why whatever response, individually or collectively, we do across the country, we have to make sure that no single part of the country is carrying a greater burden or suffering any more than everyone else. This is going to be tough for all of us, but we need to be pulling and holding Canadians together every step of the way. And that's the conversation I'm going to be having with the premiers this afternoon in our now weekly meetings. There will be many different ideas we discuss, but the most important thing, more important than doing specific or effective pressure points on the United States, is keeping Canadians united together. As we go through the pain that these American tariffs will inflict on our economy, on our workplaces, on Canadian families, we will be able to say this is happening to us by the decisions of a different government. As American families suffer.
Trump just truthed his master plan. Companies move to the U.S. for no tariffs. And that's certainly going to be a result, without a doubt. That is certainly going to be a move that a lot of companies make. But the antagonism and the disconnection of the U.S. with the Canadian economy and the Mexican economy is going to cause massive disruptions, especially in the immediate short term. And that is going to cause a contraction overall of investment. And here's the problem. If the economy goes into recession, will those companies have the capability to invest in U.S. manufacturing? Will that actually, or will that get cut off as business sentiment declines? Like it may be that he gets us into a situation where the economy contracts and the expected domestic investment never materializes because he did the tariffs in such an uncontrolled manner. And like that is the kind of situation that we are directly fucking confronting, which is like Donald Trump is a dumb fuck.
The impact of these tariffs, of this trade war with Canada, they will be saying this is happening because our own government is choosing to do it to us. That's a very different proposition. And the most important thing right now, more important than anything else, is for Canadians to
Zelensky just called the meeting regrettable and is ready to make peace negotiations. I mean, like, that makes sense because, you know, Ukraine is an American puppet state. And the Europeans just don't have the capability to fill in what the U.S. is doing. They just don't. Without dramatically reducing their own security. This is what people don't understand, is that if Donald Trump acts in a way that is maximally designed to destroy the Western Bloc, because of the way these structures are built, he can cause a serious, immediate short-term damage. And, you know, might not be the worst thing to happen. I mean, what's happening to the economy is bad, but NATO falling apart might be a good idea.
To remain united. And that's why all premiers will be focused on things.
Spellshifter says just moving a company wouldn't necessarily change anything beyond the investment costs. The supply chain for certain business sectors can't be wholly contained in the U.S. That's exactly right. Like, America doesn't have a strong production of lithium, and America doesn't have a strong production of rare earth metals. America doesn't have a strong production of, like, advanced microchips. Like, they're just not in the U.S., and they can't be quickly moved. So if you just slap tariffs on everybody, you're just making prices go up, which means you're going to contract the amount of the economy. And if you raise tariffs while cutting spending, you just make the economy smaller. Because you're taking demand out of the economy. You're just putting the economy into a recession because tariffs are like a tax. So if you raise taxes while cutting spending, you just make the economy shrink. So why the recession is very likely to happen, and then we'll talk about possible reasons that might not happen. Number one, business sentiment, animal spirits, the vibes are fucked. That just feels to be true. Second, the tariffs causing price increases and reduction in demand because the higher the prices are, the less people could afford, the less transactions are going to take place. And then three, a contraction of the federal spending while raising taxes, lowering overall aggregate demand, as well as cutting hundreds of thousands of government jobs. That's going to mean all those people don't have money anymore to spend into the economy. That's going to cause further contraction. So animal spirits fucked, tariffs raising prices, cutting government spending, cutting government employment. That's not good, folks.
That make sure Canadians don't get divided amongst ourselves. This is a time for us to pull together because the Americans will be having very real and very challenging debates and discussions about these actions. There will be no debate in Canada about whether or not we should be pulling together and responding. Everyone is aligned on that, and protecting that is job one for the Canadian government and the Canadian Prime Minister.
Hi, Mr. Trudeau.
Okay. Évidemment, il y a différentes choses que
Of course, there are a number of things that different provinces or industrial sectors may want to do to not feel so much pressure from the U.S. But I want to be very clear in saying that it's not because we don't want one sector or industry to carry a heavier burden than any other. And therefore, we have to be fair in our response and in the supports that we provide. Because the most important thing in all of this situation is that Canadians remain united. And that's what I intend to speak to the premiers of the provinces and territories about this afternoon.
Unity
with respect to our courage and determination as a country and as Canadians will be our most effective weapon in the coming days. Because Canadian families facing negative impacts as a result of these tariffs will be saying, well, we're going to stick together as Canadians because it's another country that's doing this to us. And we are going to stand firm and get through this together. American families
qui vont voir des pertes d'emploi,
that see job losses happening, that see prices going up because of these tariffs,
eux, ils vont devoir se dire,
they will have to
c'est à
say,
cause de
well,
notre propre
yeah, it's
gouvernement
because of our own
qu'on
government
est en train
that
de souffrir
we're
maintenant.
suffering now.
Et ça va amener
And
des
that
conversations
will lead
extrêmement
to
difficiles
very tough
entre
conversations
Américains
between Americans
sur le pourquoi
with
de cette
respect
guerre
to why
commerciale
this trade war is
injustifiée.
even happening.
We will take one last question and follow up. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Trudeau. Mackenzie Gray with Global. You mentioned the markets earlier. Someone who knows a thing about them, Warren Buffett, came out and said that these tariffs could be viewed as an act of war. Does the Canadian government believe these tariffs from Donald Trump is an act of war from the U.S.?
Canadians are not angry at the American people for this. We don't have anything against Americans. Americans are our neighbors, our friends, our partners. We do things together. We've done things together for decades and generations. This is a policy decision by the American government designed to go after the Canadian economy. This is a trade war, yes. But Canadians are hurt. Canadians are angry. We're going to choose to not go on vacation in Florida or Old Orchard Beach or wherever. We're going to choose to try to buy Canadian products and forego bourbon and other classic American products. And yeah, we're probably going to keep booing the American anthem. But let me tell Americans, we're not booing you. We're not booing your teams. We're not booing your players. We're booing a policy that is designed to hurt us. And we're insulted. And we're angry. But we're Canadian, which means we're going to stand up for each other. We're going to fight. And we're going to win.
There are probably a lot of folks watching on TV today who've been laid off or they were told not to come into work today because of these tariffs. Can you explain to them why you've not announced any relief measures today to help those folks out?
As I've said, our entire focus has been on preventing these tariffs from coming in, if there was at all a way, and it now looks like there was never a way we were going to be able to avoid these tariffs that the President was determined to do. And our focus now is going to be on making sure that they get lifted and that there is an end to this trade war as quickly as possible. But over the past month, we have been working on measures that if these tariffs last longer than a few hours or a few days, we be able to help Canadian citizens, Canadian workers, Canadian companies make it through this time. But let's also be clear, this is going to be tough. The American trade war is going to hurt the Canadian economy and is going to hurt all of us. What our government needs to make sure we're doing is try to make sure that nobody goes hungry and that everyone carries their share of this. And that's a hard thing to do, but that's where we're leaning in, both as a federal government and with provinces and territories on responses to be there for Canadians.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister.
Merci.
That concludes today's press conference.
And that is the Prime Minister of Canada on this extraordinary day in Canada's history, with some extraordinary comments from him directly, things that we have, frankly, never heard him say before, speaking very frankly to both Canadians, Americans, and to the President, Donald Trump, saying that he agrees with the Wall Street Journal that this is a dumb idea.
Hey, Shiffy Vickers,
he also made it
thanks for the
clear that
subs.
he doesn't believe the President's motivation is about the border or fentanyl, says that he wants to damage or force a collapse of the Canadian economy in order to annex this country. He also, off the top of his comments, said that this is a day where the United States is now aligned with Russia, a lying, murderous dictator, talking about Vladimir Putin, and not with Canada. An extraordinary moment for the Prime Minister in what is likely his final week in the job. I want to bring in all of our people helping us with our coverage. Janice McGregor in Ottawa.
Oh, are you going to remain in an alliance with us if that's the case?
Simpson and Peter Armstrong, both in Washington. An awful lot there to get into. So let's talk through some of it. I'm going to start with Janice, if that's okay. I don't know that I have ever, in my time covering the Prime Minister over more than a decade, heard him speak that forcefully and that bluntly about an ally, about a colleague in this extraordinary moment for the country, Janice.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally concur in that.
Yeah.
The language of diplomacy that, when you're afraid of upsetting someone, that all out the window in terms of what we just heard. And an extraordinary kind of three-part structure to his actual prepared remarks. Some of the blunt language came in the questions later on as well. But if you look at sort of the way his message sort of spoke to the American people first, then had particularly targeted words at Donald Trump, and then talk to Canadians. We know the American networks were on him, at least for the initial parts, didn't maybe hang in for the whole thing like we did. But, what they heard was a refutation of what they hear from their own White House. That kind of opening part where he talked about the changing relationship between the U.S. government and Russia, and plainly sort of looked into the camera and said, make that make sense. This idea that this fight is being picked with a neighbor like Canada, while they are sort of, looking the other way and warming things up with Russia. I thought that was an extraordinary moment right off the jump. And then sort of the economic message, taking that really hard to the American viewers, the ways that this is going to hurt them. And then, as you say, the very poignant remarks to Donald Trump, calling him by his first name, and not Mr. President, trying to speak his language about how he wants to be seen as a smart guy, but this is dumb. And then the words of reassurance. And even that, this came up in the Q&A at the end, but sort of like putting a spin, a frame around the booing at the hockey game. When Canadians boo, this is what they are doing, and this is what we mean by that. If any Americans still watching and you're wondering kind of what this means for people, interpreting that, in a way, I think would set a lot of Canadian heads nodding. All of it.
Whatever I hear, we will never be the 51st state. My response to that is like, how would you stop it? Are you depending upon America not wanting to look bad in the world? Are you depending upon America, not, like, how sure are you? What are you doing? You're still in an alliance with the United States. The United States is saying we're threatening you, and you're still in an alliance with the United States. What is the point where you say these threats are unacceptable, and if you continue to make them, then we're going to withdraw from alliances? We're going to kick the U.S. military out of our borders. We're going to end, NORAD cooperation. Like, do you know that United States and Canada have a joint defense network, right? Because we need to, we use Canadian territory to, help detect incoming missile launches. We have a joint air defense network that prevents strategic bombers from flying over the North Pole. Like, that is like, our defense network is a nuclear defense network, and it's completely integrated with the US and Canadian military. Is that going to end? Are you going to continue to share defense information with the United States? I mean, like, it seems to me that you're not really considering a physical threat or it doesn't seem to be that you're willing to defend your country. That's, and I hate to say that, but it does seem to me that the only thing holding Canada back is this belief in Trump respecting norms. And I highly suggest you study the Anschluss. If you don't know what the Anschluss is, when Nazi Germany took over, they went and they said, we think every German speaker should live in Germany, and we're going to annex all the territories where people speak German, and we're going to protect the German nation. And one of the first countries they annexed was Austria. They just went in and rolled in and annexed Austria. It took it over without a fight. That is the kind of shit. Like, if you're a Canadian, you should be studying the Anschluss. And you should take it more seriously than you are. I don't think you like, 70% of Americans are relatively nice, normal people, but 30% of Americans would make Hitler blush. And they're in control. All right? Those Nazi Americans are in control. 70% of Americans either got tricked or were too lazy to do anything about it because they've been convinced that politics doesn't matter. The fascist Americans are in control. There's nothing they won't do. And you're not protected because you're white or whatever else fantasy in your brain you think makes you safe.
Extraordinary, and we can tuck into some of the mechanics of some of the important legal kind of Easter eggs he buried at various points in these remarks, but just stunning set of messages here.
Yeah, and I'll bring in Katie now too for your perspective, Katie. He also, when he spoke to Canadians, was very plain in saying, "I don't want to sugarcoat it. This is going to be tough." And he talked about some of the things that the Canadian government can do to step up. But I want to ask you, Katie, about what you thought of his message to Americans, who saying to them, if you want to know what's going on and why you're suffering, look at the government that you elected, and speaking directly to Donald Trump. What did you make of those comments?
Well, I've reached out to the White House to see if anyone in the Trump administration has any direct response to that, because we've never heard language like that from the Canadian Prime Minister directly at Donald Trump. Whatever their conversations might be in private, we certainly haven't heard anything like that in public. I keep checking Donald Trump's Truth Social to see if he has any sort of response there, and there's nothing yet. Rosemary, I'm told by a senior Canadian government source that at the Canadian Embassy, there are these banners that say friends, allies, and partners that have been put up all over sort of the pillars at the embassy. And that Donald Trump, as he makes his way to the Capitol, and he drove past the Canadian Embassy, because it's right there, right across from the Capitol, that was something that he would have seen. I am told that those banners have been taken down as a result of what has taken place over the past 24, 48 hours. So there's just little things like that. But now we wait to see if the president is going to have any sort of response, if he was monitoring what was going on. Some American U.S. news networks, notably Fox News, did carry some of Donald Trump's or some of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's comments. But given how pointed the language came from the Prime Minister, I expect, and they're pointed short sound bites. And you know what plays well in American news? Pointed, short sound bites. And so I very much suspect a lot of American network news, and we know that President Donald Trump consumes a lot of it, particularly his favorable news outlets, that they will be picking up this content and that it will make its way in front of the president. And the question is he going to respond? Is he going to acknowledge it? Donald Trump has a very big day, separate from everything that's going on with the trade war now, this trade war. He's going to be delivering a joint address to Congress where he's going to outline his vision for America. And part of what he campaigned on, of course, was trying to generate revenue for the United States through tariffs, imposing tariffs on allies and adversaries alike, taking this massive step in escalating the trade war. And so now, when Americans start to have to sort of live with the consequences of that, he's going to try to get ahead of that before the consequences, may be really felt the hardest, and trying to sell his vision to America. That is what he is going to be doing tonight. But one thing to keep in mind, there are some other really key issues in this moment that Americans are concerned about. First and foremost, some of the major changes underway at the American federal government.
Freeland is a massive piece of shit, but now she's advocating for the Hassanabi doctrine. Canada eyeing NATO allies nukes to deter Trump threat. Trump has said that Canada is not viable as a country without U.S. trade. Freeland proposed forming stronger defense ties with France and Britain as their nuclear arsenals could aid Canada. You actually think France and the UK are going to nuke the United States or Canada? Bro. You can't be serious right now.
Live in the Midwest, who live in the middle of America, the heartland. China knew exactly what it was doing. One item on the list of these various tariffs on agriculture products, tariffs that range in anywhere from about 10 to 15% in addition to what we've already seen, are soybeans. Soybeans are important here in China because they are used to feed pigs. Pigs make up the pork industry, a very important commodity, a very important part of the Chinese economy. But it's not just these tariffs. It's the language that we are hearing from the Chinese government. Do I think a new leftist party is going to win by 20? I have no idea what's going to happen. The response today, it's a lot more pointed than we've heard even just days ago. Take a listen to some of the remarks.
We'll have to see who runs, and who is even trying to get power. It's impossible to say right now. I would like to see, I want to do a draft Sean Fain campaign. We need somebody who is actually left wing, who has a connection to organized labor, and is just not another Democrat bog standard politician who sucks.
Just earlier today, here from Beijing.
If the U.S. has ulterior motives and insists on waging a tariff war, trade war, or any other kind of war, China will fight the U.S. till the end. We advise the U.S. to put away its bullying face and return to the right track of dialogue and cooperation before it is too late.
None of this is truly a surprise. It's not a surprise move by Beijing, and certainly the United States isn't going to be that surprised by it. I've been talking to a number of sources who are both in diplomatic and economic circles, and the real question was, it wasn't if China was going to respond, it was when and just how strong of a response it would be. And now we have these actions from today. And Becky, as we've talked before, this very much falls in line with China's foreign policy playbook of tit for tat. You hurt me, I will hurt you back. And now China
That's
is
called being
responding
normal.
in this very forceful way, Becky.
That's the reciprocal morality. That's normal.
And perhaps we might have expected that from
Tit for
Beijing,
tat is
as
how you play
rightly
the
point
game.
out, Mark. Paula, let me...
If people benefit by cooperating, but they betray you, then you have to betray them back. You have to punch back. If you don't, they will exploit you. That is just basic game theory. Now, the optimal way to play the game theory is have forgiveness. Like if people decide they want to cooperate again, you should cooperate.
Bring you in. What we might not have expected 2 months ago is a tit-for-tat sort of trade war between the US and Canada. And today, Canada going so far as to suggest that it faces an existential threat from its neighbour. Walk us through what's been done out of the gate in response to these US tariffs. And Paula, what more could come from Canada?
Well, Becky, you bring up the salient point here, right? Canada has a free trade agreement that Donald Trump negotiated and signed in 2020. This is not China, someone that the U.S. Had considered an adversary. This is Canada, and really it is ripping up the trade book, if you will, for what they have negotiated already with allies. So what is Canada doing? Well, it is hitting back with 25% tariffs on goods like meat and vegetables, dairy products, alcohol. Think about it, Becky. Anything in the United States, and we're talking about things like bourbon or wine or beer, will get a 25% tariff. But more than that, many provinces here in Canada, I would say the majority, will now be taking U.S. alcohol off their shelves and refusing to sell it. This is the kind of trade war that we're in for right now. We do expect to hear from Prime Minister Trudeau at 10:30, giving us more details on all of this. But I do want to give you some insight into what is already going on both sides of the border. So right now, customs brokers on the border are trying to figure out when they have a truck that comes in with their bill of shipment, what they must charge those companies that are now shipping from Canada into the United States. It is already leading to delays, but more than that, it is already changing the way people, businesses have basically designed all of their assembly, all of their inputs, and it is really wreaking havoc, as I'm hearing from some business owners already. Keep in mind, this morning, Becky, we have already had two top CEOs in the United States from both Best Buy and Target say that Americans will feel this in terms of not just the tariffs that the U.S. has put in, but the retaliatory tariffs from Canada and Mexico and China, that Americans will feel that in the coming days, not just weeks, but days. All of this to make clear that when we say the word tariff, what we could actually be talking about is inflation, because that
Best Buy is absolutely crashing right now. It's down 15% almost, 14.68% on the news of the tariffs in Canada.
All
All right, welcome back. We got about 7 minutes before we get started with trading here at the New York Stock Exchange. Stocks are looking to open lower after what appeared to be a bit of a rally in the aftermarket yesterday. Meanwhile, we get Best Buy earnings. Let's get to them.
Best Buy.
I just saw Hassan was banned. Greatest day
Doing
ever. What's your problem with Hassan getting hut? You seem kind of uncool. I'm not gonna lie. But you're a gamer and developer. Okay, what do you develop? Come on, I want to hear more. Oh, are you like a huge Zionist? Is that what it is? Are you a huge Zionist, would you say? Oh. Were you a pro Havana syndrome guy? Are you a pro Havana syndrome? My family had to escape pogroms in Ukraine, so I am not devastated by what is happening. The treatment of Palestinians is abhorrent and needs to stop, but also tokenizing voices like this are very dangerous when it comes to peace in the region. I saw a number of you call for the end of the state, and using this guy's voice is tokenizing. If it's about ending the oppression of apartheid, then I'm 100%. I don't think you agree with that anymore. What happened to your brain, man? Well, okay, so you're a mega liberal Zionist who, after October 7th, it was very clear that you support. Also, you use the phrase tanky. Hate to see it. Honestly, hate to see it, chat. Yeah, Hassan has a temporary ban. Anyway, Stonks, what were we saying?
Magnificent job, CEO. Okay, so David, the numbers out today were much better than expected. Not better than expected, not better than feared, much better than expected. All mine was very good, too. There was, without a doubt, a shock when you saw how good these were.
Is
because
the
what it
phrase
said,
tanky not legitimate? Basically, anytime somebody uses the phrase tanky, they're stupid. They're a stupid person. That's it. It basically, whatever you read tanky, you should read that the person is saying that they're a dumb cuck moron and that you should ignore everything else they say. It's a very useful word. It's sort of like, hit me in the head. I'm hitting myself in the head with a hammer.
is that Corey Barry, and it raised the dividend too, in this environment is just doing incredibly well. And then there was this paragraph at the end of her talk where she said, of course, tariffs are coming, get a lot of stuff from China and Mexico, and we're going to have to raise prices. We're not sure how much, but we're going to have to raise prices.
Right.
And then, while she was talking, phew, that's why I was saying, since we don't know the extent and who pays and whatever, we're just getting these blanket, look, someone's going to have to...
Okay, well, we don't use the R slur around here because it's just cringe as fuck, to be honest. But I'll answer the rest of your question, which is, what is your opinion on why Trump is just destroying the economy? Because he's dumb. But the answer is, it's hard to divine exactly what Donald Trump is trying to do. I just think he's kind of not very bright, and he's trying to just throw his weight around to look like he's tough, but he's also not very intelligent. I mean, he's a guy who went bankrupt with a casino. Can you imagine going bankrupt while owning one of the few legal casinos a few hour drive from Philadelphia and New York? Like on the beach? Like, how do you have a casino that's a couple hour drive from Philadelphia at a 3 or 4 hour drive from New York City fucking go bankrupt on the beach. Like, that shows you how he's a complete fucking dumbass. So I think it really comes down to, like, and I don't normally like to give the answer that someone's stupid, especially in geopolitics, because I think that that means that your analysis is flawed. But in this case, like, it doesn't seem to be a direct, there's no direct explanation. And the thing is, like, it's not just me saying that, it's they're not providing any explanation or even any argument for what they're doing. And so I don't have very much in the way of an evaluation of what they're saying, because they're not saying anything.
Pay. And if someone's got to pay, the stock suddenly goes from 87, David, from 87 to 81. Okay, 81. So the people who bought it before the market, they were, of course, idiots. That's okay. You have everyone.
It's now down at 74, chat. It is not good. The volatility index is up. The stock market is down 641 points. It's up from down 800. Dow drops 600 points. NASDAQ flirts with correction territory as Trump ignites trade war. Mexico has also responded.
But very importantly, tomorrow tariffs 25% on Canada and 25% on Mexico, and that'll start. So they're going to have a tariff. So what they have to do is build their car plants, frankly, and other things in the United States, in which case they have no tariffs. I would just say this to people in Canada or Mexico: if they're going to build car plants, the people that are doing them are much better off building here, because we have the market. We're the market where they sell the most. And so I think it's going to be very exciting for the automobile companies.
Is there any room left for Canada and Mexico to make a deal before midnight?
No room left for Mexico or for Canada. No, the tariffs, they're all set. They go into effect tomorrow. But very importantly, tomorrow tariffs.
I mean, and this is what Canadians are, this is what's popular in Canada right now.
Now, I'm joined now by Doug Ford. He is the Premier of Ontario, Canada. Mr. Premier, we appreciate you making some time for us today. We know that President Trump delayed these tariffs a month ago, and now we're hearing today that this will happen for Canada. Do you have any indication that he might delay them again? Anything that's giving you any hope at this point?
Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me on, Aaron. For the sake of the American people and the Canadian people, he needs to pull back. I'm going to tell you exactly what's going to happen here. President Trump ran on a mandate to create more jobs, keep inflation low and lower cost. It's going to work totally opposite. Plants will close down within a week. Assembly plants in Michigan, which is a red state. Manufacturing will stop. And the people of the U.S., which I absolutely love, the American people, they're going to be paying more. The market is going to go downhill faster than the American bobsled team.
Mike, we need more theoretical knowledge about things generally, instead of just think of tankies as someone saying they are stupid. When we are out in the world and referred to as tankies, should we know how to respond more intelligently? Yeah, you should respond by spitting in their face. Like in Minecraft. Like, what do you want me to say? Like, they're saying a dumb pejorative to shut down their brain. The response to that should be to disengage. Like, what do you want me to say? No one's going to call you a tanky in IRL, and if they do, that's the appropriate response. Tanky is a meaningless phrase. It's a thought-terminating cliche that liberals say because they can't defend America's foreign policy. Like, if you're like, the United States of America is the aggressor in the Middle East, they'll say you're a tanky. And you're just like, okay, well, I guess we're not analyzing what the United States is doing and why. How do you deal with dumbass shit libs who post like this? This may be one of the worst accounts of all time. Most of 1950 to 2022, like the most peaceful part of that was when the Soviet Union existed. I guess we have to bring back the Soviet Union so we can get peace.
It's going to be an absolute disaster for both countries. We're your largest trading partner. I don't want to respond, but we will respond like they've never seen before. You need our uranium, you need our potash, you need our high-grade nickel. I will stockpile our high-grade nickel at 50% of your military and manufacturing needs. Your aluminum, the steel, the lumber. It will be an absolute disaster. And this is all due to one person, that's President Trump. I have talked to endless governors, Republican governors and Democrats, senators and Congress people. I love the U.S. I lived there for 20 years. They're all saying this is the craziest thing that someone could ever do. Well, sir, it's going to create massive problems.
Well, let me ask you, you said a couple of things here I want to ask you about. First of all, you said that you will respond. Help me understand what you expect the Canadian Prime Minister might do and what you yourself might do as the leader of a province there in Canada.
Well, we'll respond strongly, and we don't want to. On the critical minerals, I will stop shipments going into the U.S. for nickel. It will shut down manufacturing because 50% of the nickel you use is coming out of Ontario. I've ordered our bureaucrats to cut off tens of billions of dollars of contracts that we have with the U.S. We are the largest purchaser of alcohol in the world. We buy over 3,600 products from 35 states. I talked to the governor of Kentucky and Mitch McConnell, don't touch our bourbon. I'm going after absolutely everything. And I don't want to. We keep the lights on to 1.5 million homes and manufacturing in New York, in Michigan, and in Minnesota. If he wants to destroy our economy and our families, I will shut down the electricity going down to the U.S. And I'm telling you, we will do it. It's unfortunate. I would rather ship you more electricity, ship you more critical minerals. I want to ship you more energy, more potash to keep your farmers going, and uranium that you use for your nuclear power. It comes through from Saskatchewan over to Ontario, and it's going to be a massive, massive problem.
Now, Doug Ford is a right-wing Canadian freak. These are the type of people. These are the type of people that are being empowered to attack the U.S. That's crazy. Oh, and electricity prices have absolutely skyrocketed in the Northeast.
I'm telling you, we love the Canadians love Americans. I love the U.S. Everyone does. And not one American friend. When I lived there for 20 years, I've talked to all of them. Hardcore Republicans are saying this is the biggest mistake President Trump has done, and we're dead against it. And I've yet to find one who supports him.
And so if I'm hearing you correctly, you are ready, sir, to go to war, to go to a trade war with the United States, with the Trump administration.
It's the last thing we want to do. It's one person that's coming to attack us economically. Your closest friend, your treasured ally that will stand shoulder to shoulder with you in every situation you faced. And he's attacking the person, his number one customer. There's no country in the world that buys more products off the U.S. than we do. We're the number one trading customer to 28 states. And a lot of them are red states. They're going to feel the pain like they've never felt before. We're going to feel the pain. But I'll tell you, Canadians are resilient. We're strong. We're proud. And we're going to fight back like they've never seen before. And I'm sorry to the American people that your president has decided to do this. I apologize, but he's giving us no choice. There's nothing wrong with our trading. He keeps saying, oh, they're taking money. No, that's not accurate. Matter of fact, if you take out our oil, that you take 4.3 million barrels a day, and we keep things going, outside of that, take the energy to the side, you have a $55 billion surplus, which is good. That's fine. America has a $55 million process, and I mean, 55 billion more in trade, and God bless them. We want to expand the trade. We want to create an AMCAN fortress, the two greatest countries in the world. We have what you need. We want to ship more what you need. And I'll be very frank, this is nothing like this ever in the history of the U.S.
You obviously you have taken a very strong stance here today. Have you had conversations about your perspective, your action plan with the Prime Minister, with the folks in the Capitol there?
Numerous times. I've talked to the Prime Minister up to a couple days ago. I'm the chair of the Federation, meaning the chair of all the premiers. I've talked to him on a daily basis. We all feel the same way. We do not want to do this. We love the American people. We love the U.S.
Mike, who do you think blinks first in the tariff war? How can the Canadians blink? I mean, like, how can they blink? They have to do retaliatory tariffs. like that's just how it goes. Nobody's blinking.
But when one person attacks our country unprovoked, then we're going to respond, and we're going to respond like the U.S. has never seen before. We do $1.3 trillion of two-way trade, and we're like a big family between U.S. and Canada.
So we're almost out of time here, but we know that President Trump posted on social media that drugs are pouring into the U.S. from both Canada and Mexico, despite no evidence really to back that up. If this is his pretense for imposing tariffs, what should Canada do in response? How do you start to right the ship here in this relationship?
Well, first of all, Secretary Lutnick came out and said, yes, we're moving forward. I agree. Let's tighten up the borders on both sides. We put 10,000 personnel along our borders. And it works both ways. We're working with the DEA. We're working with U.S. Border Patrol, with our Canadian Border Patrol. We're ramping it up because we're seeing, so far in the last couple of weeks, we've busted 624 kilos of cocaine coming from the southern border, endless amounts of guns. Illegals are coming across. I agree with President Trump. Let's both tighten up the borders, and we're doing it. You know, your borders are Holman. He seems to be satisfied because we're showing results. We're listening and we're agreeing with the administration. We need to tighten up both sides of the border, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Okay, we will leave it there for now. Ontario Premier Doug Ford, sir, we appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Love the Americans. God bless America and God bless Canada. Do not let your president do this, or plants will be shutting down within a week.
All right, thank you, sir.
When he says southern border, is he referring to the U.S. or Mexico? He's a Canadian, so he's referring to his American border.
Not coming from the government per se, but the premier. It's coming from the health sector. Holy Christ. What was that? I just swallowed a bee. Oh my. Holy Christ. I knew that little bugger. Oh. I'm good. He's down here buzzing around right now. He has a lot of real estate. Now, if that wasn't a clip, okay, this is going to be replayed over and over again. Holy Christ, he's wedged in my throat. Sorry, guys. Little bugger got away in there.
Ugh. As a result of Trump's tariffs at 12:01 a.m., Irving Oil, a major refinery based in St. John, New Brunswick, Canada, adjusted fuel prices on nearly all fuel heading for the U.S. Northeast market to reflect a 10% tariff. Look for the retail prices to react quickly in this market.
El Financiero se publica la última encuesta de la presidenta y nos da mucho orgullo decirles que sigue aumentando su aprobación por parte del pueblo de México. 85% del
85% approval rating, chat. For Claudia Sheinbaum. 85%.
Let me read you some details.
Approval rating. 85, Zazman, I know. 85% approval rating.
La gente la respalda. Y algo bien importante a destacar de la encuesta tiene que ver con los atributos. Nuestro movimiento en Morena hemos siempre dicho que una de las principales características es la honestidad. Y eso es.
Why would a Canadian supplier raise prices before the tariff is applied? The tariff was applied, so they raised prices. All right, somebody found the clip.
Let me read you some details off the list of these bills.
thoughts on this guy being a tanky. I hope he fucking drives a tank to your house, okay? That's my thoughts on this guy being a tanky. Take a fucking week off and think about how stupid you are as a human being.
In Arkansas.
Yeah, that's about the only response to someone calling you a tanky. Oh shit, I grabbed the... And chat, Donald Trump's approval rating has finally started to crack. Thank God Donald Trump is a dumb piece of shit. If he was actually an able politician, we would be beyond cooked.